Hi Noel, good speaking with you. We've obviously been speaking for a little while and looking and discussing about how we can help the goalkeepers, and you've got a unique perspective on it. So first of all, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and Flannery Peak Performance?
Hi, Sean. Thanks for welcoming me on. Really cool. Done a few of these. It is exciting. It is exciting. But I mean, I think especially in football circles, my background's a bit unusual. I was a racing driver when I was young, and I'm been a manager in racing car teams for a long, long time. So basically, I've spent the last 30 years immersed in elite sport. And I'm a trained mind coach as well. So I work in a number of sports: tour golf, world snooker, and football. But mostly, it's in football as goalkeepers. Because really that's in my view, the most challenging one on the mental emotional side of things, as you well know, my friend.
No, wonderful. So you got a variety of skills. Obviously, we've had a little chat about cross sports and what can be learnt from different areas of the game. We'll go into a topic a little bit later on about how we can look to help the goalkeepers on the mental and emotional side of the game. But would you mind just chatting about a few of your experiences quickly?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the when I started working football, it was apparent on day one the area that most interested me. And I think it's really important to do that. I think in life, to do that. In the goalkeeping, it's the stop start sports are more challenging, like on the mental and emotional side. And the fast forward sports like race driving, outfield, and football. I think apart from pre-game, whilst you're in the game, it's a lot easier. And I think it's been, I've been working with goalkeepers online and one-to-one, but mostly online, globally, Mexico, South Africa, a bit in Asia, States, and obviously throughout Europe, so it's been really exciting, journey, working with some keepers for a number of years and going through everything that they go through, and it's challenging, I mean, I think it's a very challenging role. And I think really, I mean, even from a mental health perspective, it can be like super challenging, So there's a lot to it, and I thoroughly enjoy, the work with this. And I think speaking to so many goalkeeping coaches like yourself, mechanical coaches, and listening to goalkeeping podcasts and stuff, so much it goes up. Like if you pick one thing that's the most important thing for a goalkeeper to be good at it, what keeps coming up time and time again is decision making. I think that seems to be the thing. Do I come out? Do I not come out? Where we're going to put the wall? It's all these split second decisions that they've got to trust themselves and able to do. And I just find the solutions and able to try and help the keepers is very much of, if they made a bad decision, it's through lack of knowledge. And what I'm actually finding, especially in more experienced keepers, it's really isn't. It's much more through a lack of good space, because obviously how we feel profoundly affects our ability to make good decisions. And you must have found that in your playing career as well.
That we've obviously met away from it, and we spoke about that in depth, and how sort of being sort of mentally tense, if that makes sense, like that knock-on effect to your body. So do you want to just sort of lead into that, really, what we were discussing?
My word, yeah. It's not kind of like widely known with players, but nor should it be. This is what I do for a living. But on a cellular level, your body's ability to perform a task is completely linked. Your performance is completely linked to how you feel. So, like, feelings is kind of like where it's at, like as humans, because it's the very first thing we'll ask each other. Everybody that meets, be it friend, family, or foe, across the globe in every single different language, asks exactly the same thing when we meet each other. That's how are you in one way or another. And there's a reason for that, because as humans, this is what we want: is to feel good. It's not, winning the FA Cup or getting to the Premiership or being a millionaire or anything else. It's none of those things that we want. It's actually the feelings that those things give us. That's what we want. So ultimately, it's not sports psychology I do. I just work with people's emotions in order to get like the best emotional performance out of them. So basically, you know, like the task isn't to save the ball. The task is to get the best of yourself. That's the job. It's not to win the game, because again, as we know in football, like, you know, you're just one of 22, and it's so beyond your your ability to do that, you know, in terms of like what we're in control of, right? And even for the single sports, you know, like you know, golf or snooker, you know, it's the same process. You know, it's their job isn't to go out there and win or put the balls in the hole. Their job is to get the best of themselves, because they're not in control of these balls going in the hole. There's too many variables for that. So I think fundamentally, for me, sport is, I find time that time and time again, it's played, in my view, in the wrong way. They're misunderstanding what the competition is about. And it's about, you know, is for football, if your 11 guys get the best of themselves more than the other 11 guys, then the end result of that will be a win on the score sheet. So understand why the win happens. It's cause and effect. So as I say, it's not just going out there for the win, or you're missing a bit in the destination there. The bit is like to get the best of yourself and to go from there. So you know, it's been a lot of fun, you know, working with that. And I think as well, like in finding football, things like, you know, Formula One and Premiership, English Premiership football, probably widely recognised as setting the standard in all sport, right? And there's a reason for that. Golf, tennis, all these things are behind that. It's just money, basically. Money buys resources. Resources buys people, and ideas and processes are put in place, and things are done to the best possible standard. And so going into football teams that do, the entire team is full of specialists in football, which makes a lot of sense, right? But there's problems with that too, because where's the learning from other sports? Where's the learning from Formula One? Where's the learning from tennis? Where's the learning from golf? And this is kind of part of my kind of things I'm able to do with players and clubs and teams is I'm bringing learning from other sports every day. So there's, like, I was with a golfer today, and we were doing stuff that, you know, I'd worked with a goalkeeper before, you know, and there was again similar thing where, you know, some golf stuff went into a snooker player like earlier this week. Just a little idea that I thought, this might suit him, you know, and a strategy to be able to handle his emotions. And so there's all these little kind of like anomalies that kind of like pass between the sports, but when you're in a sport and you're immersed with specialists in that, that doesn't happen. So there's things getting missed. You know, there's opportunities to go that. And I'm not quite sure like what the solution is to that, you know, for the clubs, for the big clubs. For the individuals, it's not a problem, you know, like, you know, they can get external coaching, you know, from myself and many others like me, you know, but yeah, it's certainly like, I feel that it's certainly something that needs addressed, you know, in all top sports.
No, and look, we spoke at length about it being purely set around the individual. And for example, if you're a goalkeeper within a team, you're probably competing with the other goalkeepers, whether you're starting, whether you're not starting, whether you're the backup, whether you're in the group or a youngster coming through. Your ultimate competition is that individual that is starting, because ultimately everyone wants to get there, but it's an individual challenge. So when we were speaking about that, do you want to think or tell us any sort of coping methods that can help players that are maybe mentally struggling with that? So how can they best prepare themselves if they're not starting, for example?
Yeah. I mean, I think again, fundamentally, you know that part of the reason there's struggles is because you know that the tasks they're trying to do is wrong. So be it the player on the pitch, they're trying to save the ball in a game, so no one control that. Just get the best of yourself. That's the job. But for players that are not starting, God, it's something I see a lot. You know, like a player will progress through the clubs, and in actual fact, it's almost kind of mandatory, isn't it? You know, for every keeper at some point in their career to go through this. And what's tough about it is they don't go through it at the start, really. You know, because if they're exceptional youngster, you know that they're always the starting keeper, and then they're exceptional early professional, and they're making their way up and up and up, and then you know they suddenly they find themselves in the Premiership and they're number 2 now, and they never had that before, and so many players that they just can't cope with it at all, and it's certainly something that's tremendously challenging, and hard for their motivation to keep going and keep everything there, and certainly, sorry, excuse me. Certainly, it is super challenging for them in terms of skills being able to cope with it. It's like all that matters is that you as a player get better. Nothing else matters other than that. Because if you're developing, then your career has to follow suit with time. It has to follow suit. So that's what to focus on, not what have I not got? You know, why am I not playing? And they put all their energy into this. And so in time working with a player who's in that position, as I see very, very often, like every week I had a conversation about this, you know, it's really like we're focused on right, what are we doing with your goalkeeping coaches and you know the other external coaches, because often I'm finding I've got a player, I'm one of 4 paid members of staff that they're personally paying out with the club. You know, which is, you know, it's quite astonishing, but they're recognising that who their competitors are, and I need to get an edge over that guy. So it does help them feel good. You know, so certainly, like, you know, it's all about personal development. And so we get all of their focus on personal development instead of being the number 2. So that's basically the answer there. How successfully that happens differently according to the individual, you know, and how accepting that. But them not accepting that and pushing against that and being upset about that, all they're doing is hurting themselves. And so that, you know, when the opportunity comes, and this is what happens, you know, like we're making sure we're ready for this opportunity all the time, because you don't always get you know, notice obviously, you know, they might, as a number 2, they might get to play the cup games or things like that. So obviously we're prepping for that, but we're always assuming that, yeah, you're not on the starting sheet for tonight, you know, because I speak to them before the game, but that doesn't mean you're not playing tonight, remember? Because, you know, your poor number 1 might get involved in an injury or something, or he's got stuff going on at home or whatever. But you can be in, and we've got to be ready for that. You know, we've got to be ready for that. You know, and you know, and really kind of like as a team, you know, like, you know, working towards that, and you know, because it's kind of like a team within a team. So really, that's the strategies. You know, it's just changing it in terms of being personal development, and it's certainly something that I can honestly say for number 2 keepers, 100% of the time they've not been focused on that. They've been focused on the problem. And if we focus on the problem, really all we get is more of the problem. And, well, we see a problem, we look for solutions around that, right? Okay, so I'm number 2. But there's a reason why I'm number 2, right? Because the other guy's 4 years more experienced than me. And he's been in this club for 3 years. And so with that in mind, obviously he's being viewed as a better choice. And if he wasn't, then you'd be in. Right. So how do we make us be viewed as a better choice? And so often it's like, well, it's just nothing I can do in 4 years. No, No, no. We want to be viewed as the better choice, despite being 4 years less experienced. Let's find a way. Let's find a way to be even, more exceptional. Let's get, so we've had it at the point where it's not been kind of orchestrated within the team, not at all, because that'd be a bit underhand. But the player finds out, the manager's spoken to him because, or the defence have came and spoken to him and said, you know what, we would like to try this guy. I know he's a number 2 keeper, but we really feel, we like working with him in practice, and we like this, and he's winning people over, by his work ethic, staying back late, etc., etc. Instead of finding ways to do less, we find ways to do more, right? Which is what we're all about, like, for sure, absolutely.
No, and like you mentioned, there's a number of different people that'll be having conversations with, say, for example, this number 2 goalkeeper. So, what about the emotional side of games? You're going to have the manager saying, "Well, you're not in the team for X, Y, and Z." You're going to have the goalkeeper trying to push them. You're going to have maybe pressures at home from parents and other family members. You're going to have the fans maybe critiquing moments, particularly with social media now. What sort of methods or ideas can you help people with dealing with that emotional side of the game?
And again, it just becomes, it's a kind of similar solution. Like I talk a lot with players about us being badass, right? Because like they'll say like that, like they read something, or my dad said that, there was a message on Twitter, about me being this, and this, right? And I was like, right, how do you feel about that? He says, well, I'm really butthurt about it. Right. So it's, again, they're focused on the problem. So they're focused on the tweet. I'm like, well, what does it say about you, though? Well, I don't know. Well, I mean, why are you hurt? And it's like, because let's take an extreme example, like a superhero, right? So say you had Spider-Man, right? And I know it's an extreme example, but this really helps players, I find, and it's like, so if somebody came up to Spider-Man and said, I think you look really silly in your suit, and I don't know how you can see anything with that mask over your face, right? Is he going to be hurt by that? Why does he care? He's a goddamn superhero, right? He's totally badass. Why is he going to care? He's not going to care what anybody else thinks, right? Just doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, because he's absolutely badass. And this is what's happening in all of us, like whenever we get upset by a situation or things that people are saying to us, it's because we're not where we need to be. It's just it's a help. This guy on Twitter has helped you recognize that you're not where you need to be. Because if you were totally, absolutely on it, totally badass, full of confidence in what it is you're doing, then you've got a wall up. You're just protected. Everything else just bounces off. Just didn't care what these people think. Didn't care that crowd's booing me because I've let one in. Right, all of these things just melt away. So that's what we deal with. Not the problems, because the problems are going to happen. Goals are going to go in. They're not going to get picked. Stupid people are going to say stuff on social media. The crowd's going to be shouting, etc., etc. They've got to be, emotionally really, really strong. But there's building blocks to how we do that, because generally, and it's exactly the same in life, and we all know people that are like this. The people who are outwardly chest beating and like really, really, come across as like super confident and stuff, 90% of them, that's just a fun. And that's not actually the case at all. Not at all. Not at all. It's the, so it's like we're all vulnerable at times. And it's okay. That's all right. That's absolutely okay. But it's just like, what would be much better would be this dad says, "Oh, this guy said this on Twitter," and it's like, yeah, did he care? Or he says it, and you hear that same news on Twitter, a guy, and it's like, God, that's really disappointing. But an hour later, he's just like, you know what? It just doesn't matter, and it's gone. It's gone over you. Now, great. Now you're being badass. Now that's it. So it's about, like, if we build this building blocks of foundation, confidence and belief in themselves, then all these things just kind of bounce off, and they're just not an issue, or the manager who's fundamentally, and this is where it's really tough, right? Because in most jobs, say you worked at McDonald's, right? The manager has done your job, right? Flipping burgers, right? So he understands your job at least, right? But in football, obviously, most of the managers are outfield players and not goalkeepers. So they've never done your job, and they can't possibly understand it. They really can't. They can't possibly understand what it's like to do that role, unless they've done that themselves. So that's why, like, it can be very hurtful for keepers, like with managers. But I say we just go through the same thing. We let them see it from the manager's perspective. And so, his job's on the line here, and he's passionate about the club, and he wants to get results just like you. But like, everybody wants the same thing, and it's like, do you get fiery sometimes about it? Yeah, you probably do, and he does too. So therefore, he's not this really, really bad guy, and he's also doing it from a bit of wacky understanding because he's not done your job before. But you know what? It's all right. You chose this as a career, right? I mean, it's not a shock, is it? That you choose to work with football, and therefore the consequence of that is you're going to be in a dressing room and a manager's going to be shouting at you. Well, yeah, that's what's going to happen. So it's getting a perspective about the whole thing. And hopefully, they'll come on the phone, upset, but they'll come off the phone like, yeah, I get it.
So with that then, so obviously say someone like the examples you use in there, so they do care what other people think, and they're looking at social media or teammates or other players in the club, fans, etc., having a little pop at them. How can they start learning those methods to start building that resilience?
Well, it's the problem is there's a big gap, right? Because say you've got the average age of Premiership goalkeeper getting their first game is like 28, right? It's quite old, right? Because they weren't experienced, right? Obviously, the fitness is less an issue. So obviously, at 28-year-old, the keeper's probably been getting, professional training from at least, let's say, 8, right? So it's had at least 20 years of keeping on the mechanical side of things, right? So obviously, if this is, a scale, 10's at the top and 0 at the bottom here, obviously he's absolutely 10 out of 10, right? It's absolutely at the top, right? And the reason for that is it's had tens and tens of thousands of hours of training and practice to be really good at the mechanical aspect of doing that game, right? So of course he's good at it. They all are, right? But obviously on the mental and emotional side, on this side, they've had very little or sometimes zero training on the mental emotional side of things. So obviously their skill set is accordingly, 3, 4, 5 out of 10. So it's not so much that they're doing anything wrong. It's more just I find there's a lack of knowledge. It's like, Sean, like for you, when, in sessions where you're teaching the youngsters, obviously it's different to what you're doing with a, 25-year-old keeper. I mean, obviously, you can't teach trigonometry to, 9-year-olds. And it's exactly the same on my side of things. I end up doing like relatively basic stuff, for a long time with keepers because they're, I would say probably 80% of the time, this is the first time they've had any training on this side of things. So they're getting to know themselves, getting to know how humans works, getting to know how they work, and I get to learn to know how they work. And then from there, with some skill set, they'll learn some skills. Like today, for example, I was also in the morning with a 14-year-old snooker player, right, who's destined to be professional. Like, kids, amazing, right? And he's so a tool that he's been using, for example, right? It's only our second lesson together, but he gets, frustrated, if he misses and stuff, nothing unusual in that. Makes some errors and just get frustrated and upset with himself. Very non-accepting of it, right? So we start talking about, home life and stuff, and it turns out he's got a couple of dogs, right? So he's got a couple of Jack Russells at home, very happy home life. And one of the Jack Russells is called Fanta, right? So it's this little white Jack Russell, right? And he showed me some footage of it, and she's like catching the ball in the back garden, and I just suddenly had a kind of like bit of a brainwave there, man. I'm like, right, I mean, look at that, and we started slow motion in the video, right? Fanta missed the ball, so you threw the ball at her. She missed it because it went over her head because she's only little, right? And it went off the fence and she had to go behind the shed and get it and then come running out. Did she look upset doing that? It's like, well, no, of course not. And it's like, well, what's wrong with you doing the same? And so we came up with this WWFD. What would Fanta do? So, so when he misses or has an issue or he's feeling frustrated, so it's like, right, well, if this was Fanta, what would she do? Well, she wouldn't care. It's just not a problem. Because Fanta's totally badass. Because dogs are. It's just how they are. They're always in the moment, right? Missing that catch is in the past. It's all about right now, in this moment. We're worried about the future, which is stress, nervousness before the game, run up to a penalty kick. That's all future, right? It's all about now, this moment that we're in, right? In sport and in life. We're not worrying about what happened in the past, which is okay, it's now 4-0. But again, all that stuff's in the past now. Dog's always in this moment. And if it makes a mistake, just doesn't care. It's just not a problem. And so we started using this. What would Fanta do? And so he kept telling himself so he'd miss. And so his performance was kind of 6, 7 out of 10, right? Because he was having some misses and stuff, kind of struggling. And then, within a few minutes, and he caught him getting frustrated and like, remember? Yeah, Fanta, yep. I found it doing. It's like, yeah, Fanta would just be having fun and enjoying this and forgetting the little error. And within 10 minutes, he played probably the finest snooker I've certainly seen off a 14-year-old, and certainly his mum said that's the best he's ever played. Just in 10 minutes. And so that's like an example of tools to be using, and also like, good God, like we learned that off a dog. But it's like, so that'd be like an example of, but different things work for different people. So it's like we all like different clothes and different meals at the restaurant and different drinks and stuff. So, in terms of that was a tool, and that's the tool he's using now. But he's going into a big match tomorrow, and we're going to catch up tomorrow night. It'll be interesting to see how he's found that that's worked out for him, but it's cool. But that's just an example of like an emotional skill so now he's using that to feel better. And because he feels better on a cellular level, obviously his body performs better. And if he does that, more balls go in the hole. That's the task, is to get the best of yourself, not to put the balls in the hole. And so this is why I find that sports are just like relentlessly, in my view, played in the wrong way, because it's all about result. Like, you ask any of those players in the tunnel, what's your mission today? And they'll look at you like, like you're some sort of psycho. It's like, obviously we're going out there to win. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? You're so not in control of that. Because if that other team has the best game of their lives, every single player on that pitch plays the best game that they're ever going to play, you guys are going home with a loss, and that's all there is to it. So yeah, so it's really hence why it's such a flawed premise. So it can take time to kind of weed that out of player. And it's like, no, your job's to get the best of yourself, and you're going to do that by feeling good, or various other kind of triggers that different players kind of work on.
No, and with that, say for example, the young lad that you're working with, you found a method that works. What would Fanta do? Love it. It works for that individual. It's very, very unique. Obviously, for him and for other people picking up that new habit, it's going to take a little while for it to set in. Are there any sort of tips that you would give just to make sure that it's something that you can sort of build into your routine rather than carry on getting frustrated? What can you do to make sure you keep using it and using that tool because it does help your performance?
Yeah, I mean, I think like quite again, like I like keeping things simple and basic. I mean, I think quite simply. I mean, sometimes I kind of turn up with a player, and we've got like just a sheet of A4, and on one side it's green, and on the other side it's red, and we'll just write ahead at the top in the green bit. These are things that make me play better. And the red bit, these are things that make me play worse. So, and players can just do this for themselves, just do exactly the same. Write down the things like what does when you play bad, what does that look like? How does it feel? You know, and then and then work on that, and then like start filling out things on the green side of things, and it could be, I play at my best when I'm just endlessly confident. I play at my best when I've had a good night's sleep. I play at my best, when I'm super athletic. I play at my best when I'm very kind of high energy and high impact. But for some players, that's not the route to go, because that leads to frustration and anger very easily. And frustration and anger is obviously always going to be on the red side of the list, right? Because that's never it. But as I say, like, so I think just simple things like that. And then when you write it down, and read it back to yourself, you're then starting to understand about yourself, as a player. And like, if you're really, really, really committed to getting better, have the balls and the you can't be hurt to, make something like that up and print it off and show your goalkeeping coach that. And I says, here's a blank one. Could you fill that in for me? Like, critique me. Like, what do you think? When I play at my worst, what do you see? When I play at my best, what do you see? And then, you go to mum and dad as well and see this and, do the same thing. And the wife and all that. And then you put all them together. But so many will be the same. The answers will be much the same. So condense them down, and you'll probably get it to 5 or 6 things on each side. Then you'll have a really good understanding, and then really it's really simple. What you've got to do is make sure you do green list stuff every day. Keep doing that. These are all the things that you are and how you feel when you're playing your best stuff. Just keep doing them. It's really simple. And it's always a choice. You didn't have to get upset because the ball's going to the back of the net. And this is it. It's like, I would liken it in terms of, we've only got a few minutes left here, 4 minutes left, but it's like before this dies. But in terms of like, being in the moment, like a dog, it's like when you see a penalty go in and the keeper get upset afterwards, that means is upset about something that's already in the past, right? So therefore, seconds before that, he knew that if X, Y, and Z happens, i.e. the ball goes in the back of the net, I'm going to get upset. And that being the case, we can never be happy and in the moment and at our best, when you know the future that's going to happen just in a few seconds is going to be bad. It's like me asking you to walk down the M1 in the fast lane, going the wrong way, and to be all right with it and be happy about this, knowing that the future is just about to hurt you. It's just never going to happen. It's just never going to happen. But what if that ball going in the back of the net had no effect on you? What with that? And that is like almost unimaginable to keepers. But I've had keepers get to that point, and they're absolutely okay with it. And the advantage that gives you is now you're not worrying about the future, because the future can't hurt you. You're all about this moment. It's you're just completely ingrained in this moment, and this is all it's going to be. And so really, that's a really, really powerful thing, and a very kind of much more advanced kind of place to be, and certainly something that will work with snooker players going into competitions, like a young 16-year-old going into the Junior World Championships in Australia, which he won. And he went with that, not with the view of winning, which is what every one of his competitors were doing. We went there to get the best of ourselves and to try and learn things for the future. That was it. That was our process. And we spent a month absolutely nailed on that. And if you could play football in exactly the same way, golden. So I say all this upset that I have on the phone on these Monday calls with players, it's just not the way. You're only hurting yourself and blunting your performance. I get it because you're passionate about it and you're not being asked to no care. What you're being asked to do is completely commit to being at your best before the game, during the game, and after the game. And being upset on a Monday and still upset on a Wednesday about something that happened on Saturday afternoon. If any player can explain to me how that helps, I'm open to hearing that story. But it is exactly that. It's just a story, just a nonsense story.
No, look, you've gone through a variety of different methods. I don't think anyone else is likely to use the Fanta one with that name, but I'm sure they can tailor it to their own needs. Look, lots of positive stuff in there, mate, and some real good detail there and various situations that hopefully the goalkeepers out there can use. I think we should probably wrap it up there now, and
Sure.
and yeah, we'll look to get the next one planned in and take it from there.
Always a pleasure, Sean. Take care, pal.
Top man. Cheers, Noel. Take care, mate. Bye bye.